Hey everyone, Zeddy here again to the brand new video, and we are wrapping up our review series on the madness at the Darkmoon Faire. We're going to take a look at every neutral card that will be released for both standard and wild, and again we're rating it on a 5-star basis, 5-star being an absolute god tier, meta-defining, super good card, and 1-star being just garbage you would never put in your deck under any circumstance. Let's take a look at the neutral cards. So first we have Safety Inspector, 1 mana 1/3 Battlecry. Shuffle the lowest cost card from your hand into your deck, draw a card. So premium stats with a potential upside / downside. I could see this being pretty good in an aggro deck where you don't really care as much, like you have like a useless 1-drop in your hand or something like that, and you just play this to try and find a burn card, or you've pull-kelted in like Face Hunter and you want to get to your Dragon's Bane a little bit quicker. It seems solid. It's a 1 mana 1/3. You can just play it on curve. That's fine. Diremol was literally played for that reason. I'll give it a 3. It's probably going to see play. What very few 1 mana 1/3s have not seen play, and I can't imagine this one won't, especially with the card draw aspect of it. And in wild, it lets you put patches back into your deck. This is god tier. Finally, patches is no longer a bad top deck. It's in every Pirate Warrior rogue deck forever. Probably not, but you could consider running it. I could see this in like in Big and Druid, right? Where you play in Biggin, you play Safety Inspector, and then you draw out a buffed minion. And again, it's a 1 mana 1/3, so the stats are all right. I could see it popping up in certain wild aggro decks, so I'll give it a 3 there. Could definitely see some play. Next, we have the Costumed Entertainer. It's a 2 mana 1/2 minion. Battlecry, give a random in your hand +2/+2. It's garbage stats, decent little hand buff. You're not going to put this into your deck in standard or wild. It gets 1 stars for standard and wild. Next, we have the Parade Leader, 2 mana 2/2 minion. After you summon a rush minion, give it +2 attack. I guess it's slightly better than Warsong Commander, maybe. But if I'm comparing this to Warsong Commander, we have problems. It's a permanent buff attack, but again, you're not doing anything with this. This is 1 star in standard and wild. I can't possibly see this being a card. Next, we have Prize Vendor. It's a 2 mana 2/3 Murloc. Battlecry, both players draw a card. Dane had an amazing tweet calling this Cold Light Oracle, as in like Bud Light. Beautiful. Love it. Cold Light's one of my favorite cards ever. This ain't no Cold Light Oracle. Both players drawing a card. It's not nearly as impactful. You can't really do a mill deck strategy with this. I just don't really see it, but maybe you put this into like, maybe it makes Murloc Shaman good enough. We talked about in the Shaman video, this kind of support's not enough, but it might pop up, you know? If a deck really needs that draw, it's just not going to happen. I'm going to give it a 2 in standard and wild. It's a premium stat of Murloc that can draw you some cards. Certain decks might be able to utilize it, but I think they'll be relatively niche. Next, we have Rock Rager. Magma Rager is crying in a corner. It's a 2 mana 5/1 elemental. It has taunt. This dies to everything. It's absolutely terrible. It's a 1 in standard and wild. Even with the Quest Druid synergy in the wild quest, can't really see it being run. Next, we have the Showstopper, 2 mana 3/2 minion, Death Rattle, silence all minions. This one's interesting. It's a premium stat minion, but the effect of silencing all minions is really frustrating for your opponent. And it's like the only way for them to stop you from silencing their stuff, they got to silence this or transform it or put it back to your hand. This could be a decent silent option. You just play it on curve or play it against like a taunt thing, or give it rush with like a broom. That could be really good. So this might be a decent little tech option. I'll give it a 3 in standard. In wild, you're probably running like Spellbreaker still. You have other options like that. It's probably too slow there, but I'll give it a 2 in wild. But yeah, definitely could pop up in standard. Next, we have the Wrigley Horror. It's a 2 mana 2/1 Battlecry. Give adjacent minions +1/+1. So we got like Fungalmancer back. Costs less than half, but it only gives +1/+1. But this is really good. Imagine a Zoolock deck would love this. A token deck would love this. We all know how like powerful Fungalmancer was. I don't think this is at that level. It doesn't scale quite as well, even though it's like half as less. But yeah, I think this will pop up in Zoo tokenish decks across the board. It's really solid. I'll give it a 3 in standard, and in wild I'll give it a 3 because maybe even like in Big and Druid with on this, it might be even worth it there. They curve out to 2. It might work out. This seems really good with like any deck that wants to run patches. Just immediate buff on turn 2 is actually pretty powerful. So yeah, 3 in both standard and wild, pretty solid card. Next, we have Banana Vendor. It's a 3 mana 2/4 Battlecry. Add 2 bananas to your hand. We've had a card before that, only give yourself the bananas. Now you can do that. I mean, it's like a mill card, I guess. You can go all Mukla with it. You get the bananas too. Quest Mage could run this, but I don't know. I don't see it in standard. It's like a troll mill option more than anything. Giving your opponent bananas typically has always been more of a downside than the upside of having it. even if you build your deck around it with like Apprentice and stuff like that. But hey, maybe Priest wants to utilize this with all their mana cheat options. Getting those cheap spells might be worth it. I'll give it a 2. It's not horrendous, but I don't see it making the cut in standard. And in wild, I think you'd rather just use Banana Buffoon and get the bananas yourself and don't really worry about the 2 health and milling your opponent aspect of it. So I'll give it a 1 in wild. Next we have Darkmoon Dirigible. I don't know. I can't read. It's a 3-mana 3/2 mech, Divine Shield, Corrupt, Gain Rush. Feels pack filler to me. I don't know what deck you're putting this in as standard and wild. It's a whatever minion. I'm gonna give it a 1. Not much to really talk about here. We have Darkmoon Statue, 3-mana 0/5 minion. The other minions have +1 attack, so it's like Raid Leader. Corrupt, this gains +4 attack, so it's a Yeti if you play something a bit more, but that's pretty slow. It's a buffed up Raid Leader, I guess, but again, feels like an arena card, a pack filler. You're not going to play like the Warlock legendary spell to cheat this out for 0 mana. I don't think it's quite worth it. I'll give it a 1 in standard and wild. It's pretty unremarkable. Not something you're ever going to put in your deck. Next, we have Gyre Worm, 3-mana 3/2 elemental. Battlecry, if you played an elemental last turn, deal 3 damage. This is basically going to be a mage card in standard because that mage elemental deck might be a thing, especially with the payoff of that 8-mana spell. And for that reason, I'll give it a 3. It's pretty good removal on 3. And with that 2-drop that you're going to be able to play or play Zephyrus even, curve into this, it's going to work a good amount of the time. But yeah, the stat line sucks, so if it's not working, it feels really bad to play for 3. So you really need to make sure that elemental synergy is going, so I'll give it a 3. And in wild, I also see this as a mage card, and you could slot this into Odd Mage. Odd Mage likes all the elemental stuff. You got Firefly, all of that. It'd feel pretty good in there, and Odd Mage isn't the worst deck in the world, but it's not really a top tier deck. I can't really give this a 3, which means it would be a ladder card, but I'll give it a 2 because it respectively could pop up in like an Odd Mage deck, and that, it's a kind of a deck in wild. Next, we have the Inconspicuous Rider. It's a 3-mana 2/2 minion. Battlecry, cast a secret from your deck. Hey, it's like Mad Scientist except Battlecry, and it costs 1 more mana. Is that good? Oh yeah, that's really good. I want to play this in Mage. If you're playing any secrets in Mage, that's really good. Hunter, even though the secrets cost 2, you're still cheating it out of your deck, and that can work well with a lot of your stuff, including, the petting zoo, all that kind of stuff. It's just a really solid card, and you're not probably going to play it in Paladin because cheating out the secrets ain't really worth it, and Oh My Yogg is like the only secret worth running. And you could even justify potentially in Rogue, but again, you have more efficient stuff to do. I'm going to give this a 4 stars in standard. I think Hunter and Mage can definitely utilize it. And in Wild, I don't know. Obviously, Secret Mage is going to be a very powerful deck. It already is. It's getting a lot of good stuff. Do you want to add this? Does this work in your 3-mana spot? All you have right now are your secrets and Kirin Tor, but you could throw this in there. It's definitely realistic. And of course, in Secret Hunter as well. I don't know about it, but I'm going to give it a 4 for Wild as well. I think it adds that extra redundancy that you're looking for. It's just a really powerful card. Next, we have a 3-mana 4/4 called Kither, Ritualist. It has Taunt, but it has a Battlecry of add a random 4-cost minion to your opponent's hand. So you're basically giving them that curve play, but you're getting a 3-mana 4/4 Taunt. So, it's like getting Animal Companion and getting that 4/4 Taunt. Is that good? I mean, it's good. Is giving your opponent a 4-cost minion worth the upside of it? Probably not. Stats, like I've said countless times, just aren't that relevant. Like getting a little bit of an upside on stats, but a downside of getting potentially high roll by some stupid 4-drop or whatever. It's not really, you're not going to build your deck for the strategy. I just can't see it. I don't think it's that bad because the average 4-drop is going to be not that great and your opponent's probably not going to want to play it. I just don't think it's worth a spot in your deck. So in Standard Wild, I'll give it a 2. I don't think it's horrendous. I just don't think it's really worth a spot in your deck. Next, we have the Circus Amalgam. It's a 4-mana 4/5 Taunt, and it has all minion types, so it's like an amalgam. Well, I mean, it's in the name. So Chillwind Yeti has now been power creeped. To an extent, this is worse against Black Knight. It's worse against Crabs. Are you putting this in your deck? No. Even if it's any tribal deck, it's just too slow for pretty much any of those. But it's a solid little cute meme, but it's a 1-star in Standard Wild. You're never really going to play this card. Next, we have the Circus Medic. It's a 4-mana 3/4 minion. Battlecry, restore 4 health. Corrupt, deal 4 damage instead. Restoring 4 health, not bad. Corrupt, deal 4 damage could be really good, especially like Quest Shaman. Quest Shaman could actually use this. It's a 4-mana deal 8. But we also had like that Kiromo Maximo card that could like Pyroblast for 5, and that didn't really work out, but that had Overload. This just has to Corrupt. This card might not be that bad. Like that Battlecry, healing can be rough to come by in Standard. And I could see this popping up. And corrupting it might be a downside more often than not, because you'll kind of want that healing. I'm going to give it a 3. I could definitely see this seeing play. In Wild, not so much. It's a little bit too slow. There's a lot better healing options. You have like refreshment vendor and all that stuff. So I'll give it a 2 in Wild, but yeah, it's a pretty interesting card. Next, we have the fantastic Firebird, 4 mana 3/5 elemental. Has Wind Fury. It's garbage. It's a 1-star. This even used to be a 5 mana 3/5 without Wind Fury. It's like Grook Fu or something like that. That was terrible too. I know it's 1 mana cheaper, but it's still not worth playing whatsoever. Next we have Knife Vendor. I just talked about Refreshment Vendor. Now we got Knife Vendor. It's a 4 mana 3/4 battlecry. Deal 4 damage to each hero. So Refreshment Vendor healed each person for 4. This does 4 damage for each. I mean, maybe you're playing this in like all-out aggro deck like Face Hunter. It's 4 damage. It's a decent amount of damage. You might run it in there. I think a pure aggro face deck, maybe even like a Secret Passage type of aggro rogue, could run this. Very unlikely to, but when you don't care about damaging yourself, maybe it's worth it. Or maybe you're playing this in a Dark Glare type deck in Standard because there's not as good self-damaging options. But then you're probably playing Pit Lord, but I don't know. I'm going to give it a 3. There is a chance the pure face decks could run this, although it is a little bit expensive. But in Wild, absolutely not. I'm going to give it a 1. This is just, there's so many better aggro options there. This is really slow. Next, we have the Derailed Coaster, 5 mana 3/2. Oh my god, those stats are bad. But Battlecry, summon a 1/1 rider with Rush for each minion in your hand. So if you're holding a bunch of minions in your hand, you could theoretically get 6 1/1s with Rush and 3/2, and that's just really not even that good, and you have to be holding a bunch of minions. This card is absolute garbage. It's a 1-star in Standard and Wild. Next, we have the Carnival Clown. This is a 9 mana 4/4. Terrible stats. Has Taunt. Why? Oh, Battlecry, summon 2 copies of this. I mean, that's pretty good. That's a 9 mana, 16/16 in Taunt. And Corrupt, fill your board with copies. Well, that's something. So you could play this in like an Old God type deck, like you're playing an Old God card. You play that and you go into Carnival Clown, or you copy this somehow. Or you get Yasharaj and get more Carnival Clowns and fill your board. This could be a win condition. It's a really slow win condition. That's the problem. Right now in the game, it's really hard to play cards that are more than like 8, 9, 10 mana. And I don't know if Carnival Clown gets you there. It does have Taunt. It's very relevant. But the stat line is not fantastic. 4/4s are pretty vulnerable to a lot of stuff. There's a possibility there's a Carnival Clown deck that is a viable win condition. It just gives me Nomi vibes where it's just not enough. But the Taunt is what can be that saving grace. I'm going to give this a cautious 3. That maybe it pops up, maybe it works in some archetype as that playable deck, but I don't know. It's skeptical. And in Wild, no chance. Way too slow. 0 chance in Wild. It gets a 1. You can't play a card like this in Wild and expect to ever win. It's just way too fast-paced there. Next, we have Claw Machine. It's a 6 mana 6/3 mech. Rush, Death Rattle, draw minion, give it +3/+3. So it's a pretty good rush minion. It kills mostly everything on turn 6. It draws a card from your deck that's pretty good. It's a tutor in terms of a minion, which is pretty good, and it buffs it, which can be pretty good. Is this card worth running? Probably not. It's a 6 mana 6/3 rush. It's too slow for a lot of decks. You typically don't build around on this kind of stuff, but it's like a really arena, crazy card in Arena. Like, this is arena card on steroids. But I'm going to give it a 2 in Standard and Wild. Don't see it making the impact in either format, but I could see it being really good in Arena, or maybe like a duels deck. Next, we have Strongman. It's a 7 mana 6/6 Taunt. So, pretty bad. Corrupt. This costs 0. That's insane. So this card, if you're playing any late game deck, you can just throw this in there. So whenever you play an 8-drop, you play a 9-drop, you play a 10-drop, you can just slam Strongman down. And if you're playing a Yasharaj deck, you're going to get Strongman back. And, well, I mean, it costs 0 anyways, but yeah, like, it's just a really powerful card. Just don't see any deck that doesn't want to play the late game, the control game, to play these greedier cards. It's not going to run Strongman. It's just so freaking good in those decks. I'm giving it a 4 stars for a Standard. I just see it as an auto-include in a lot of those decks. In Wild, it'll probably pop up in, like, a Reno Lock deck, maybe a Reno Mage deck, something a bit slower, but there's not a lot of those. Reno Priest can't run it again because of Pole Celt issues. But yeah, those slower decks could definitely make room for it. So I'll give it a 3 for Wild. Not quite as impactful, but yeah, when cards cost 0 and they have Taunt and a decent stat line, yeah, it typically will pop up. Next, we have a card with really good stats for the cost. Optimistic Ogre, 5 mana 6/7 minion, 50% chance to attack the correct enemy. You have a 50% chance to not disenchant this. I recommend you take that 50%, disenchant it for the little bit of dust you'll get. I'm going to give it a 1 star for standard and wild. Then we have Horrendous Growth, 2 mana 2/2 corrupt, gain +1/+1. It can be corrupted endlessly. So if you just keep this in your hand, it keeps scaling up and 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 up, 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 up. And that's really big. And then you play it, and then you've already died because you're holding this terrible, useless card in your hand. And then what we're going to do, give it rush and go into like, I don't know. I told Mark, you got to do this with an OTK with Stylus and let the 1/4 and like play Broomstick and charge it in. Other than that, don't keep this card. It's an epic. Don't keep it. It's a 1 star for standard and wild. It's no Shade of Nexramus. It's no questing explore. It's just no good. Speaking of not being very good, although the meme is amazing, we have Darkmoon Rabbit. It's a 10 mana 1/1. It's got to have an insane effect to be a 10 mana 1/1, right? Well, it has Rush, Poisonous, and also damages the minions next to him or attack. So it's like a cleave. So you can kill 3 things with it for 10 mana. It's a really good Monty Python meme, but we'll stick with that. It's a 1 star in standard and wild. Even if you cheat it out with a Warlock spell for like what, 1 mana, make it get a 1 mana 10/1. It's still bad. It's just don't bother. Don't bother with the Darkmoon Rabbit. Next we have Cthun the Shattered, the Return of the Old God. 10 mana 6/6. Start of the game, break into pieces, deal 30 damage, randomly split amongst all enemies, and the pieces are as follows. You have Maw of Cthun. It destroys a minion. You have Heart of Cthun. It deals 3 damage to all minions, so like an Excavated Evil. Piece of Cthun. It summons a 6/6 Cthulhu's body with Taunt. And you have Eye of Cthun, which deals 7 damage randomly split amongst all enemies. Once you've played all 4 pieces, Cthulhu is then shuffled into your deck, and then once you draw him, he will deal 30 damage randomly split amongst all enemies. Really cool card, extremely, extremely slow. Even if you tutor out the cards with like Polkelt or Stowaway or whatever in Rogue and draw them, you still have to spend 20 mana on these 5 mana spells that are all relatively inefficient. Not great. And then you got to get to your Cthulhu and have that Cthulhu be a game-winning win condition. And the only deck that I can really see make it work that I've brainstormed, that there's no way it'll work, that I will try it though, is like a Quest Shaman where you play a Tournament Medic and then you have a 0 mana hero power and then a hero power and hit Cthulhu for 60 damage. That'd be incredible, but it's so slow. And if you're playing the quest, you have to play all these bad Battlecry minions and then you have to play the spells. It's just a nightmare. I love the card. I love the thought of it. I like that it could give a control deck a win condition. I'm just not sure if it's going to work, but I'm going to give it a 3. I'm cautiously optimistic that Cthulhu will pop up as a viable archetype for some deck somewhere. And again, as more cards are made, this card can only get better to help get it to that point. And in Wild, it's even slower. You can never get away with something like this in Wild. I have to give it a 2 in Wild. It's just not at the power level that you need. Next, we have Yasharaj the Defiler, 10 mana 10/10 Battlecry. Add a copy of each corrupted card you've played this game to your hand that costs 0 this turn. So obviously, you're only playing this card if you're playing a lot of corrupted stuff, or a decent amount. So if you're playing like the Strong Man, getting a 0 mana Taunt, or you're getting like a 0 mana AoE, or whatever. It's got to be in one of those decks, and I think this is one of the stronger Old God cards, because cards that cost 0 this turn that have direct impact the turn they are played are really good. You have that 9 mana potential win condition, getting 4/4 taunts. There's a lot of potential with this. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 in standard. I see it seeing play. In Wild, I think Corrupted is much too slow, not realistic. I can't really see it seeing realistic play in Wild. I'm going to give it a 2 there, but it's a really cool card, and cost 0 can be very powerful. Next, we have Stylus Darkmoon. This is already in the game, so we kind of have an idea how it is. 7 mana 4/4 legendary minion Battlecry. Choose a direction, rotate all minions. It's like a neutral treachery. It could be like a mind control in a way. This card has done a decent amount of stuff. You can do like OTKs with Shield Slam. That hasn't proven to be that great, but it's just seen like as a decent card, like in like Libram Paladin, surprisingly. You're a lot of times ahead on board with big taunts, and then you can just shift the board and steal stuff. It isn't too bad. It's not great. It's okay. I'm going to give it 3 stars in standard. I haven't really seen it pop up in Wild for the most part, other than doing like Avion Akun stuff. It's more of a meme. I'm going to give it a 2 in Wild. It's just, yeah, again, 7 mana cards have to do a lot in Wild, and this just doesn't do a lot. Next, we have Yogg Saron, Master of Fate. The Old God is back. Battlecry, if you cast 10 spells this game, spin the wheel of Yogg Saron. and the wheel gives you a lot of different options. So 5 of the options have a 19% chance to be landed on. That's fill your hand with random spells that cost 0 this turn, fill the board with random enemies, then give yours rush. You have take control 3 random enemy minions, cast a spell for every spell you've cast this game, targets chosen randomly, that's just old Yogg, and devour all other minions, gain their attack and health, so you get a giant Yogg. And then, of course, there's a 5% chance of getting Rod of Roasting, which casts Pyroblast randomly until a player dies. I can't wait for World Championships to be decided by Yogg. Yeah, Yogg's a really powerful card. If you're playing a card with a deck with a lot of spells, like Libram Paladin, Priest deck, you're just going to throw it in, because it's your get-out-of-jail-free card. You might just be able to scam a game. That's what Yogg's always been about. And a lot of these options are just incredibly powerful, and I just don't see why you're not putting it in a spell-heavy deck. You can also go full memes and do just silly stuff, like with Quest Shaman, spin the wheel twice, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to give it 4 for standard. It's going to see play, it's going to scam games, and it's going to be all over your favorite streamers' highlight reels and on Trollden. And yes, I will be playing Yogg on day 1 on my stream. Don't worry. And in Wild, I'll give it a 3. It might pop up there too. Old Yogg pops up, and I think this card in most ways is strictly just better than Old Yogg. So yeah, this is one of the old gods that I could see popping up in Wild. I'll give him a 3 there. And yeah, get ready to spin the wheel. It's going to be a crazy one. Next, we have Nzoth, God of the Deep, 10 mana 5/7. Battlecry, resurrect a friendly minion of each minion type. So this is the whole menagerie card payoff. And I have looked through every single class, all the neutral cards. I've looked through my collection of all the tribes in Standard, and I cannot figure out a Nzoth deck that's going to be worth really running. They're all really slow. They all require stuff to die, and it's really clunky. It's the old god I have the least faith in right now. It'll get better as more tribal minions are made, but as it stands right now in Standard and Wild, even in Wild where you just have a much better Nzoth, Death Rattles are just better than tribal minions almost always. I just can't see it. It's a good card. It can do good stuff. I just don't see it as worth running in the 10 mana slot, because 10 mana, it just has to be so impactful, and I just feel like this just isn't enough. So I'm going to give it a 2 for Standard and Wild, but I hope I'm wrong, because I really like the card. I think a Menagerie Resurrect type of thing is really interesting. And lastly, we'll end off with Fleet Hoof Pearl Tusk. It's 5 mana 4/4 Beast with Rush, Corrupt, gain +4/+4. Could go with Nzoth. It's okay. I mean, 5 mana 4/4 Rush sucks. 5 mana 8/8 Rush is really good. Are you putting this in your deck? If you're going to Nzoth, maybe. But again, it's just not really worth the payoff, the whole build around. I can't see it. So I'm going to give it 2 in Standard and a 1 in Wild. And that's it. That is every single card reviewed from the Madness of the Darkmoon Faire. Overall, I'm not in love with this set like I was with Skullomance. I thought Skullomance had a lot more imagination, a lot more creativity. We see a lot of old ideas with like the old gods and a lot of similar cards. The corrupt stuff, for at least for now, looks like it might be a little bit too slow to work as a mechanic, but again, we could definitely be wrong on that one. But nonetheless, I'm excited to play the expansion, check out all these cards, have a great time. Check in soon. I'll have a video highlighting my top picks for from this expansion, so make sure to look out for that. Have a great day. Stay salty, my friends.